Welcome to the latest edition of the Irish Rally podcast. This episode is brought to you in association with J&J Services, main agents for Hobbywell Welding Gas, the rent-free gas bottle. Now, my next guest on the Irish Rally podcast is generally the first navigator you'll see at the end of most stages on the Irish Rally scene. It's Mr. Killian Duffy. Killian, how's things?
Great, Kevin. Thanks for having me on.
Great to have you on. Of course, a lot of people will know you for two reasons, mainly, I suppose, on thepacenote.com with your Facebook Lives and stuff like that. And it's hugely entertaining most weekends when we have a bit of action. And obviously, you're a well-known navigator as well. So we've a good bit on the menu here in terms of what we want to chat about. But like, I'll start with the relevant stuff at the moment. We haven't much happening. I suppose that's been kind of huge in terms of business for you over the last couple of months with writing pace notes and getting out and doing events first and foremost.
Yeah, that's it. It's been a difficult year, I suppose, but okay, business wise and for people's health and so on. I suppose 4 months since I did notes for a rally. The last rally I did Facebook Live was for Mayo stages on the 9th of March, and then on the Thursday after that, West Cork was cancelled, and sure, everyone knows the rest of the story. So it's been a quiet year, but my wife, Michelle, she's a nurse down in Castlebar Hospital. So, I mean, if I was working, it would have been tricky. We have 3 young kids. And to be honest with you, that's the sort of, I wouldn't have been around a lot. I suppose, I'd be always away travelling between notes in UK and Ireland and away weekends. And now all of a sudden I'm home 7 days a week. And I suppose they're probably getting sick looking at me at this stage. But it's nice to spend the time with them. Obviously, you'd be more relaxed if you knew what the future held. But nonetheless, I'm using the time now. I suppose once probably 4 or 5 weeks passed, I got a bit more settled from the point of view that there's no point panicking about this situation. You have goals and you have things you want to do in your life, and all of a sudden this comes, and I'm no different than nearly everyone that's self-employed. And there's people far worse off than me. But I suppose Michelle, she works down in Castlebar, and like she was in with the COVID patients, and it was more difficult on her than it was for me, when she was going to work and working long hours and that, and you had to be all dressed in the PPE and then coming home to family life after. So I suppose I had the easy job, although it's just the uncertainty was the difficult part. But I've enjoyed it from that point of view. Now, I wouldn't like to be at home every year because obviously that wouldn't work great for business, but Wexford is looking fairly good. I think they have a good plan in place. I think there's a few things still to be sorted out, but I think they had to make a decision with the, I suppose, overseas crews. It's just in the current climate. It's not that we don't want them. It's just that we can't really have them, and it's better for PR, I suppose, if we don't have people travelling from overseas. But I hope Wexford runs. I mean, it's a great club. It's a club that I've a good relationship. I suppose I sat with PJ McGrath for a number of years and finished second, actually, behind your guest there, Stephen Murphy, back in 2005. And I always always feel very welcome. A lot of my customers are have great support down in Wexford, and I really hope it runs. And they're well organised and they have their homework done for the COVID. So it's not like they're just taking a shot in the dark and they're sort of just going with this. Like, they have a good plan in place. I was talking to Gary Bradley and they have risk assessment. They've it all done. When you see people on commenting about, passing my door, and I totally understand if people have, if there's someone there with an underlying health condition in your household, you would be concerned. But I mean, at the end of the day, like anyone else, it's no different than going to the local shop. You could meet anyone, or filling up your car with petrol or diesel. It's actually less of a risk having the rally passing. There's the thing about the volunteers, but again, everyone's well educated over the last 4 months on this, from the point of view that everyone is careful of themselves. They're socially distancing. They're wearing masks now, and we've sort of got used to it. And I the fear factor for me, I know LMC, fair play to them, did a survey back probably in April time, but I mean, the thing has moved on and people's thoughts on it have moved on, and the fear is moving a bit because we realise this isn't going to wait till the vaccine comes, and the vaccine mightn't be available to next March or April. So we sort of have to move on a bit with it. So if you don't, as I said, if you don't have an underlying health condition, then, and you take care of social distance, wear a mask, then you're almost certainly not going to get it. And the cases at the minute are at the lowest point that they've ever been. And as I said, my wife, Michelle, she worked in the COVID wards, and thankfully she never got COVID, and she was in the thick of it for 8-12 hour shifts every day during the peak of it. So, I mean, someone walking in your field, like, the chances of catching it, I'd say it was as much chance of winning the lotto, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and fair play to your other half. One of the many heroes during all this, and have to really compliment her and all the frontline staff, obviously, during the whole thing, because they showed incredible bravery. The other thing, I was talking to Gary Bradley as well, and obviously we mentioned on the last podcast with Ted Shaughnessy that, would there be a difficulty with canvassing the stages? And Gary informs me that everyone's very welcome about the idea, so that's obviously very good news too. Like,
well, that's it. You need everyone to row in behind you, and I mean, there is the thought that, should we just leave it this year or leave it? Like, at what point, if there's no vaccine, you may leave it till there's a vaccine, or else you can try to get something up and running. Like. And again, the GA is back. I know the kids are all back here. Tennis camps, cool camps, and they're mixing. Like, and there's, you go into a shop and there's people in the shop. So I mean, like, and again, we have an inferiority complex in motorsport, thinking that we're putting people out or we shouldn't be. Like, that's part of the problem. Is we should be proud of our sport. It's arguably the best sport in the world. We think it is. So let's be proud of it and stop thinking that we're putting people out. We bring a huge amount of money to local economies, often in small towns or places that wouldn't get any tourist traffic whatsoever. It's a great injection of money into all these communities around Ireland. There's great camaraderie. It's a great sport. So, realistically, like, I always compare it with the cannonball. Like, you can't even compare it. It's so far ahead of it. The cannonball is just guys cruising around in cars, no disrespect to them. But like, rallying brings so much more, but it doesn't bring the same buzz. So it's I think there's a lot of work to go into getting the buzz back and being proud of our sport and forget about putting people out. Yes, they're passing your door, but to be honest with you, I think most people would be happy to see anything passing their door this minute, compared to what we've been looking at boredom for 4 months and any sort of sport or activity. And even for people within the sport, okay, I make my living out of it, but even people, competitors in the sport, there's far less to talk about now than they had before. And, you'd always have the news from the rally at the weekend. And now everyone's looking for a bit of something to catch onto, to bite onto, to give them a bit of positive outlook on it. And that's not for me talking about my business or getting going from the, financial perspective. It's just from the people's health and well-being in what they enjoy and what they enjoy talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you wholeheartedly on that. I think it's time that, there was some kind of a forward thinking on it, and someone has to go with it. And we have rally sprints as well over the next couple of weeks, and I think you're out covering one of them. So they were very kind to motorsport in the past, especially during the foot and mouth crisis when we had the Punchestown Rally Masters and several other sprints around race courses like that. And I think that actually brought a lot of casual fans back into it, and there was a big draw for it, if I remember correctly.
Oh, there was. Sir, Punchestown was a massive success. I mean, hat tip to, of course, to Roland Morgan. Like, he's a fantastic operator, and everyone else involved in it. But like, Ackle single stage ran in 2001. Donegal had a single stage. Cork had a single stage ran out of Middleton. And, but like them rally sprints, Limerick ran an event down there as well. And yeah, it did bring people. It brought the public, because I particularly know, I suppose, with kids now, you'd nearly go anywhere for a day out. And so there's an opportunity. Okay, maybe not in the COVID, but afterwards, is trying to, get a family sort of orientated thing into the sport, welcome people to it, and involve a lot of the clubs. And I know a lot of it's been done even at the moment, is get involved with primary schools and sort of try to nurture an interest in the sport from a young age. I mean, Motorsport Ireland and Rallies Committee and the Billy Coleman Award have made huge progress in having a ladder of opportunity. You have the juniors there in the Forestry Championship. Like, what an opportunity for a 14 or 15-year-old. Like, even the driving craft that they're learning is second to none. For the rest of their entire driving life, even on the road, the actual craft they're learning is invaluable. And I think just not enough people know about it. And I think it's about starting off and try to, ceremonial starts back into towns, obviously when this whole thing lifts, but now's the time to be planning and involve your local schools. I mean, I know if there was a competition in our local school here, and if Lucy came home with, if there was something on in the local town they're all talking about, you go in for a look. And that's what you try to do, is is like the Circuit of Ireland did years ago. It went into all these towns, and that's how a lot of people got involved in the sport, the fond memories and their first memories, and that's what sticks with them, and that's what inevitably gets new people into the sport. I mean, as a sport, we tend to rely on the same people, or an offshoot of the same people being involved in it. But I think it's time now to really, a good strategy together to get young people into the sport in cost effective things, be it autocross. I know that's how I started, was in autocross. Okay, Dad was involved in rallying from as long as I can remember. More so in the early years he was in organising, but then he was competing at autocross and stage rallying at a club level. And that's how I got into it, was the autocross, and it was brilliant, and it was not expensive.
Yeah, and I'm reliably informed that it came at a bit of a cost too, because you had a nice little tumble. Was it perhaps in a Talbot at the time?
That's right. That was probably your sponsor there. It's probably Colin O'Toole that was telling you about that. Colin, I used to have great races with Colin when we were autocrossing, but one day it was Midland Autocross. I don't know, it must have been 98, 99, and Colin had a lovely Fiesta, immaculate as you can imagine. And I was sick of him beating me. He bet me in Oldcastle. He was bet me in, I think, Mayo as well. And we're only 16 years of age at the time. And I got into Samba anyway. And whatever I thought in my head, I was going to show Colin O'Toole that day. But no, I didn't. In the practice run, I ended up rolling the Samba multiple times. So that was the end of the driving for a number of years. I sold that, and then I bought a left-hand drive twin cam. I did the Ballastadair, and I did Harrington's Quarry and a few things like that. But again, I went to college then, and I suppose co-driving took over, and I didn't do okay. I did a bit of driving in 2008 in a C2R2. I did the junior championship here driving, and then I did Cork Forestry in 2009 in a Evo 6 I rented off Derek Job, and just good fun, like.
Yeah, good crack. But that gave you the leg up kind of into motorsport, and you're kind of saying that that's possibly a route that, I talk about lack of coverage media-wise in certain parts of media, but you think a general all-around promotion needs to be improved across all platforms, not just media, but kind of on a wider spectrum, a kind of a plan.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, and listen, I'm not hugely involved in committees and so on, so that a lot of this could be happening already. So I don't want to come on and say it's not, like. But I think, it's just we need to be proud of our sport, and we need to push our sport, and we need to stop thinking our sport isn't one of the main sports in this country. I think a number of years ago, okay, there's so many more sports out there than there was in the 80s. Like, and, there's, people have television, internet, they don't need to leave the house as much as back in the 80s or 70s, when rallying was arguably in its heyday. But again, the spectacle's still there. I mean, the standard of rallies in this country, every club runs an amazing rally in this country. So, it's so professional. Our safety standards are ahead of the WRC. I mean, the bails on dangerous sections, the caution signs, the care signs. I know from competing in the WRC, this is the safest place, or the highest safety measures are taken in Irish rallying. And I always say it's the most professional sport, ran by a group of amateur people that are just doing it for the love of the sport every weekend, and it's credit to all the people that do get involved and organise it. It's not easy.
Yeah, and this inferiority complex is kind of nearly an Irish thing as well as a motorsport thing. And when you consider the calibre of drivers which we've had and what we have at the moment, and we've seen it last weekend competing over in the Roma Capital Rally, and obviously we have it in Albadis again, there's so much potential there to push on, and you've competed on the world stage or whatever, but that little fraction more could make all the difference in getting our guys regular podium finishes on a world stage. We've had it with, obviously, Meek has been successful, Craig has had his podium finish as well, and we could be seeing that regularly. And we look at genuine challengers, I suppose.
Well, you just have to look at the results. Like, Craig Breen came here last year, and he wasn't running away with events.
No,
he wasn't quickest on every stage. I mean, I won't even, you've Alistair Fisher there, you have Callum Devine, you have Moffats, you have several others there that are able to match him or beat him on stages. And okay, Craig has he has the CV there, but we have people at a very, very high level. Like, even Callum, to be 8th fastest on the first stage last weekend, was never in Italy in his life. I mean, a lot of the RC guys, the events generally are pretty similar every year. They'd have their homework done. Callum goes there, okay, he was unlucky with the mechanical failure, but To me, he's just an outstanding talent. I think he's a great team. Philip Case is running him, obviously, but he's great. Brian Hoy, great lad on the notes with him. Great. He's just a good guy, and Craig is there finishing fourth. Brilliant result. I just think William Creighton again, but I think huge credit has to go to Sean McHugh, and it was actually Sean that came up with the Billy Coleman Award, 20-something years ago, whenever it first came in. And I suppose he went away for it then, and I suppose they drafted him back in, and he got John Coyne involved. And it's a massive credit to John Coyne with what he's rolling in with financially to make this all a reality. This is actually going to happen, and these guys are getting proper funding to give us an opportunity. It's the best opportunity probably ever in this country now, with, as I said, Sean McHugh running the Billy Coleman side of things and the back end of John Coyne. Like, you could say, well, Motorsport Ireland should give more money, but like, at the end of the day, they can only give what they have, license-wise and so on. And we are a small country of 5 million people. So, like, it's very hard to go to the Sports Council and ask for 500,000 just to give to one driver to do a campaign. But, like, when you have backers like the likes of John Coyne, and you have a good system in place there with Sean, and like, it's relatively, this is only its second year under Sean running it, and the co-driver academy, I know I'm involved in that. I am involved in small way in the whole program, a very, very small way, but like, I'm enjoying being part of it. Like, the standard even co-drivers in the academy is outstanding. Like, any of these guys could go to any event, and girls, because Grace O'Brien's in it, could go to any event and compete at the highest level and represent us. So not alone have we massive potential of drivers in this country, we also equally potential for co-drivers. And I think now is the time. I think it's anyone's best opportunity. The ladder of opportunities there, and I think if people are serious, they can and they show potential. Well, I think the Billy Coleman Award now, and Sean McHugh and John Coyne and Motorsport Ireland are behind them.
Yeah, very good, very good. And it's good to see that there's an element of forward thinking there, and all that's improving. And there's actually a platform there for guys to actually go on and hone their craft. And as you mentioned, they're as talented as guys anywhere. But let's bring it back to kind of last weekend. So, like, that was a kind of a freak incident with Callum, and it was so unfortunate. You mentioned the 8th fastest time on the first stage. And Craig, the takeaway from that was the MRF tyres element of it, that there's a massive improvement with the tyre over the last couple of months, that they've kind of used lockdown to good effect. Yeah,
that's it. Like, the MRF, traditionally you'd associate them with the Asia Pacific Championship, sort of muddy events, gravel. You definitely wouldn't associate them with tarmac. It's a big gamble for Craig to take, I would say, on an unknown quantity at this point in his career. But obviously they're working okay. Realistically, if you're to race the best, you have to have the best as well. So, I mean, yeah, it's not going to be easy. Like, it's if you're on something unproven, it's like a golfer changing his clubs. I think you have to be. I think it's hard to beat the brands, but obviously, if that's the deal that was in place for Craig, then he's making the best of the opportunity.
Yeah, well, they're in action again this weekend. There's a number of Irish competitors on the entry list, and you might inform me if it's all still going according to plan. So you mentioned Josh Moffat earlier. He's along there with Callum and Craig, and the other Josh is on the menu here as well, as far as I can see, according to the entry list. And then you have, of course, the WRC guys. You have Tanik and Nival there as well. So nice little lineup.
It's great. Yeah, it's a nice event, and I think it was a nice week away for the guys to get a double header of rallies when they're that far from home, and I think it's great experience, and I'm looking forward to following. It's to be honest, it's just nice to have a rally to look forward to following at the weekend.
Yeah, big time. I wanted to kind of go back to your own involvement, so let's taper it back to the whole, starting off and competing with Colin O'Toole, and then you jump across into navigating, and you kind of made a fairly big rise fairly quickly, because you got deals kind of to compete right across the world within 3 years of navigating. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, well, I suppose, I'm not saying it was any better than anyone else, but you need, Stephen Murphy said it in your podcast there the week before last, you need a lot of luck. And I suppose in many cases I was in the right place at the right time. And I suppose when the opportunity came, I made the best of it, or the best I could of it. But no, I started off doing night navigation events, sitting with Dad. The first one actually was based in Claremorris. I'm from Crossmolina, but I'm living in Claremorris now. And I finished 4th overall that night. And like I was 16 years of age, novice, first night and half-inch maps. And I said, well, in my own head, you're young. I just said, I've landed, like I've arrived. This is going to be the way it's going to be. But I went to Cavan a few weeks later, and I soon realised that I had a lot to learn. I ended up stuck at the bottom of a lane in Cavan, and we got finished, but down near the back. So it was a good education. And then it was just Mayo Forestry in '99. Dad was the clerk of the course. It was based out of Crossmolina, and Pat McGuinness, a man with a Mark II from Tubbercurry. His brother just had a stomach bug that morning, and he was doing 00, and I was marshalling at the entrance to the first stage. And the call came because they knew I had my license. I was after doing a night navigation in Midland the previous night. And I was just marshalling there, 16, 17 years of age, and said, here, would you sit in with them? And I just, I gave it, I suppose, I would have sat in the back with Dad and John Egan doing recce's and that. So it would have helped, with knowing, you knew what it was, pace notes and so on. So I sat in with Pat and really enjoyed the day doing 00, no pressure on the gravel. And then Monaghan Stages 2000, then James McGrail, a good friend of ours, he had no co-driver on the Friday evening. I was in transition year in school, and basically he said, would you do it? And I did, and I did 4 events or 5 with James that year. He was the border champion. I won the class because I missed Mayo with them the first event, but we had loads of class victories. And it was a great year. As I said, we won our class in the border championship. I picked up something in the national championship as well. But for a young person, it was great. And I suppose then going on from that, 2001 was foot and mouth, and I was doing my leaving cert, so I must have been in 4th year or 5th year or whatever, but I was doing my leaving cert in 2001, so lucky enough for me, I suppose, that rallying was sidelined for those months so I could do a bit of study. But I just started college in Sligo then, and a good friend of mine, Francis Kenny, who now works with me as well. So it's a really small world, and the way things swing and come around, that's rallying. Francis rang me and he says, would you sit with George Tracy in Ackle single stage? He's in a Group A, a Group N Preza, brand new in Preza from ProDrive. And sure, I was delighted. I took the opportunity. We finished 10th overall. And I think we were 2nd or 3rd in Group N that day. And then again, Francis rang me, and a few weeks later, and he says, hey, will you sit with a guy called Derek Jobb? And of course, I knew Derek from the Rallycross from years ago. And he was in an Evo, and we did Donegal single stage. It was Glen Village, actually. It was ran back in 2001, the year foot and mouth. And I ended up doing years with Derek. Then I did from really 2001 to 2005. I had great sport with him. Still really, good friends with him. He's a great fella. There's a bit of a difference in age, but that was never a thing. I enjoyed every single rally I did with him. And then 2003, then I got an opportunity to go to the Middle East. I suppose, again, I had to laugh when Stephen Murphy was on, like in the Statoil Escort Cosworth days. Like I remember seeing Stephen Murphy and Mickey Joe Morrissey, and they were like, when you're young, they were like gods. Like, you were looking at these, and like the thought of even talking to them, you'd be nervous, Mm-hmm. And Dad worked in the ESB, and so did Mickey Joe. So Dad sort of knew Mickey Joe over the years, and I remember eating breakfast one morning in Donegal, and Mickey Joe said, here, do you want to join me? And I couldn't believe it. It was like I was sitting beside, a superstar, which obviously Mickey Joe is. He's just one of the best people you'll ever meet in your life. And I said to him, listen, I was asking about the Middle East, and I said, listen, if anything ever comes up in the Middle East, would you keep me in mind, Joe? I can send you a bit of in-car or whatever. And he said, gee, I will, yeah. So the following year he rang me and he says, can you go to Lebanon next week? And that was it. I was working with Sean Laverty and Remax up in Donegal, just a summer job when I was in college in Sligo. And I asked Sean, could I have the week off? No problem. Headed to Lebanon with Ahmed Al-Saban and did Lebanon. And at the end of the rally, it was Gary Emmett, Lord rest him, was heavily involved in that program as well. Gary ran the cars out there. And it was Mickey Joe that opened the door and Gary Emmett for me out there. And I think I probably was lucky with, a lot of the international rally I did was with Arab drivers. And, I have the connection, I suppose, with the Middle East. I've done a lot of rallying out there over the last, 15, 16 years. So a great time. And then I suppose then, there was different things happen then. I'm a secondary school teacher by trade. So in 2005, then really I couldn't be travelling abroad because I was teaching in Tallaght Community School in Dublin. I did my HDip in UCD. And I was teaching in Dublin, and then I suppose, like everything, Michelle was living in Mayo and I was living in Dublin. I was a bit fed up and couldn't get a teaching job in Mayo. And then at 2008, then the Abu Dhabi junior team said, well, do you want to co-drive in 2009 with a couple of the junior drivers? These are guys only starting off in ST Fiestas. So I did a number of years with them. I gave up the teaching, moved to Mayo. And that was really, I suppose, the start of the thing. And then that's, I suppose, how I got into the pace notes in 2010 and running Mayo Rally in 2010 with a good friend of mine, Eamon Walsh. And it sort of then, it sort of all progressed. I was right place at the right time. I suppose in 2012, then Abdulaziz Al Khawari just rang me and said, would I do a small event in Turkey with them in a Group N Evo 9 with Talksport? They're actually the team that Chris Ingram won the ERC with. They're great guys from Turkey. Did the event and we won our class, and I think we're fourth overall. And he says, "Here, do you fancy doing a few more?" So we were out in the mini RRC, and he was fighting for the Middle East Championship that year in 2012. We were sponsored by Seashore, and then we got on great relationship in the car. He's a competitive guy. We tried to improve each other as best we could. And then I ended up doing 2013 was the Seashore. We were with M Sport in the WRC2 campaign, and we're Motor Tune Raja Figali in the Middle East, and we had some brilliant results. I mean, we had 4 WRC2 wins that year: Mexico, Argentina. I'm going to forget one now. So we had three. We had the long haul one. So we had Mexico, Argentina, and Australia, and it was just magic. I got my 2 top 10 finishes that year. I was 10th in Australia and 10th in Rally Spain. We're in the WRC version, but we lost out in the WRC2 title by a few points to Robert Kubica. So I suppose no shame in that.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. And then 2014, then I suppose we did another year. There was no plan, there was no sponsor. We did Qatar, and arguably we should have won Qatar. We had a great race with Nasser Al Attiyah, and only for punchers and drive shafts, we had the beating of him on nearly every stage, which is hard to beat Nasser. I mean, he's won the Dakar multiple times. So 2014, then we ended up doing WRC2 as well, and a limited enough program, but good results. And then I suppose it came to the end of 2014, and Lucy was born in 2013, and I was away for 4 months that year, plus doing the pace notes here. So it was very, very difficult, I suppose, on home life and everything, being gone all the time. Whenever I was at home, I was working all the time, and it was just a big drag on everyone, and I suppose especially Michelle left at home. So then Ben was born in 2015, and to be honest with you, I just at the end of 14, I was sort of burnt out. I just, between work and everything, and I was doing everything myself. And then I suppose I got Francis then on board with me in 2015 more regularly, and from the running the business side of things, with able to take phone calls and orders, and pretty much able to do everything except make the notes, even though he writes them with me, but I make every event myself. And it just made things a hell of a lot easier. And I didn't do anything in 2015 because Ben was born in May, and it was just grand. I gave Pádraig Duffy a hand with a few of his events he was doing. And then 2016, then I started training then in November 2015, because in my own head, I thought I was going to go back co-driving in 2016. I probably had the hunger back again. And unfortunately, Aziz had a big accident in Qatar, and Marshall Clark damaged his back, so he was out for a few months. So I sat back in for a number of WRC and Middle East events in a Fabio R5, and that's really it. Like, I did Rally GB in 2017 with a good friend of mine, Brendan Comiskey. I mean, Brendan is, I sat with him his first rally in Burr in 02, and we've been, I've done several rallies with him since. So I just went to GB with him and it was pure fun. There was no pressure, because obviously, when you're with, semi-professional drivers, there is a lot of pressure. But I learned a lot. I had great memories, working in M Sport and everything, great relationships built up over the years with, mechanics and people within teams. And it's been a dream, particularly to get a top 10 WRC finish. That was a massive thing for me to have 2 points to my name. I always wanted to do it, and I always wanted to win the Irish National Championship. That's, I'd say, all I wanted to achieve in my co-driving life, and I've done it. I'm not saying I'm completely finished yet or anything. I mean, I'm still 37, so I should have a few years still left in me, but I don't know. I suppose it's just work is getting busy now. The Pace Note started in 2010, and it's up until I suppose COVID, it was getting better and better, and we got into UK last year with a good friend of mine, Craig Parry. So it's just been it's been tough, but it's I suppose the Pace Notes has been great. I suppose how that started was in 2010. Eamon Walsh, who actually sat with me in the C2 R2, we ran Mayo Stages, and we sort of wanted to push the bar and give it everything we had, and we put everything into it. I was unemployed at the time because there was no co-driving contract or anything for 2010, so it wasn't a great time time wise for me, but I just said I'd get my head stuck in, and we did Mayo Stages around Claremorris, and we had Mads Osberg over, and we did a ceremonial start with a few thousand people at it, and we really tried our best to run a really great event, and it was well received everywhere by competitors and the locals here in Claremorris. And but a few of my friends had said to me, because obviously I drove in a few events in the C2R2 and that, I'd be used to making notes whenever I was competing, and a few of my friends said to me, local lads, hey, would you make us a set of notes? And I said, yeah, no bothers, I can make them. But, I was probably green at the time. I didn't even know whether I needed a license or not. But as far as I was concerned, I was only doing them for a few friends. Then a few more friends, their friends rang me and says, here, I hear you're doing notes for Mayo. And I said, well, listen, it's sort of on the quiet because, there was obviously a monopoly there for 30 odd years. And I'm sure they weren't happy. So anyway, lo and behold, I had a number of people, I won't disclose how many, using my notes in Mayo in 2010. As I said, it was only pure just for fun. I was doing it, really. I was asked by a few of my mates, one of them who lives in Australia now, James Kleiny. James said, would I do them? And then, it just sort of escalated a bit. So lo and behold, the person that had the monopoly then rang me then, and he wasn't best pleased on the Saturday. And then basically Eamon, who was beside me in the car at the time, and he says, you know what you have to do now? He says, you have to just set up against them because you've made the jump. And at the time, I had no teaching job. The co-driving I had nothing probably till May. And that was it. I said, you know what? I am going to do it. And that was the start of On the Pace Note. That's Midland Rally. Sean Cahill was the first event. There was a bit of pressure not to let me in from outside forces. But Sean dug in and got my back when he needed to, and I'll always be grateful to Midland Club for that. And they let me in to do the notes for the first event, Midland 2010. And I remember driving home from selling notes that event. It was like I won the lotto. I was just on top of the world, just because, as I said, I was unemployed at the time for those 6 odd months or whatever. There was no teaching jobs because ultimately I thought I was going to go back teaching, and that was it. Then On the Pace Note was started, and then I did a tiny bit of TV presenting with TG Carr, End of Honour from Tellegale in 2010 for the Border Championship. Ken Henderson was sponsoring at the time. And I was hopeless. Like I couldn't do pieces to camera at all, and still can't. If you tell me what to say, I just can't say it. Where I'm not too bad off the cuff. I could keep talking. Yeah. If I have to go to a set piece to camera, I just can't do it. There could be 100 takes. I say Enda Bono was ready to kill me. And, I always kept in touch with Enda because, generally, any friends, like everyone that they make in sports, I sort of hang on to them. And I like the same friends I started off rallying, okay, I might have been lucky enough I went abroad, but I like co-driving or doing whatever. But like I've never changed ever as a person. Not that I should, because you're in a relatively small sport. As I said, never fall out with the people on the way up because you don't know who you'll hit in the branches on the way down. So that's sort of the way I've tried to live my life. That I sort of try to get on with everyone, and as I said, if you remember the people that were there for you at the start, then you've nothing to worry about. But then Enda in 2012, I rang Enda again for Mayo Stages and said, hey, would you do a bit of camera work and we'll put the stage ends on YouTube? It was called Ultimate Rally News. We set up a website, and Enda said, God, I would, yeah. So John Barr, who's his cameraman and does editing, and Enda is actually he's involved in production in Tellegale and Spiddle, and myself, and we headed to the end of stage 1 in Mayo, not knowing what to do, but we just set up a little YouTube channel, and God, the reviews were unbelievable. Like there was people texting from Australia and everything saying we're loving this. So it wasn't live; it was like plus a half an hour. So we'd do the end of 1, then between 1 and 2, John Barr would edit, and when we were interviewing at the end of 2. He'd be uploading the clip on his dongle to YouTube for Ultimate Rally News. But the problem with it was quite heavy from a staffing point of view. You needed 4 people minimum to run it. So it was very difficult. But Enda and myself always said, God, if streaming ever comes that you can do it quite easily, I mean, you don't need these people. You don't need to edit and you can go at it. And that's why then I suppose in Mayo 2017, Andy and myself, it was back in Ackle, and Andy and myself, I suppose have been chatting Andy Walsh that does it with me. And we said, we're going to go down Marshall, and this seemed to be okay for Marshall. We said, sure, why don't we do a bit of Facebook Live, see what this is about, for it. And I just said, sure, why not? So we did it from our own personal accounts. We didn't even do it from the Pace Note, because I don't know at the time could you even broadcast from the same account, but you possibly could. So we did it at the end, and again, the viewership was getting bigger and bigger, even though it was from our personal accounts, and I'd have to tell people to go to Andy Walsh's account to watch it. This is only Mayo 2017, so it's only 3 years ago. And then we figured out, Andy's brilliant on the technical side of things, and of course in the interview, and he's a great way about him, and he's a great fella. And that was how the journey started. I got a couple of phone calls then on the way home from Mayo. Hey, would you be interested in doing it? I said, I'm not a chance am I going every Sunday doing interviews at the end of stages. And I suppose then I looked at it and said, well, there's an opportunity here. Like, I can either take it or let someone else take it. And then I said, well, I actually enjoy it. I enjoy being part of it. I enjoy being, bringing this buzz, bringing this story to the end of people. And, especially when I'm not competing, you can disappear very quickly. So I just love it. Like, Andy and myself are like, whenever we're heading away, and often I barely stay away. We'd head early on a Sunday morning. Both of us travel separately, but we'd be heading down. But you just don't care. If you're getting up at 4 a.m, I just don't care, because I'm happy to go and doing it. I thoroughly enjoy it. I mean, we'd 15, Monaghan 2017, we'd 1,300 followers on the Pace Note Facebook page. And now we've, I think, 27,000 odd, 28,000 followers. And we've never paid for a Facebook ad or anything, so it's all been totally organic. And then the screen filters came, and it just looks a bit better. And we're still doing it from phones, because it has to be flexible. You could do fancier ways with camera, but then who's going to pay for it? So we sort of hit the thing right, that we're sort of in a sweet spot for what people are prepared to pay sponsorship wise for the exposure they get. And it brings the news. And just, I like, clubs have never paid for it. The only clubs that have ever paid for it are the ones that I've actually asked to pay for it, but I've never asked a club to pay for Facebook Live. And I think that was a major thing, because from when I was doing the notes, I didn't want to be coming in, at a club meeting and then they're saying, hey, this lad is doing Facebook Live and he's looking for more money. And that wasn't the case. I'm grateful to every club that gives me a safety plan and rule book, and I try to do whatever I can for them in promotion or trying to push their events. But I just said that day that I would never charge the club unless they come. And there's a number of clubs, we say McKillie, for example, always have their sponsors, and they say, well, you run with ours. Of course we will. So that's the only case. So it's been massively successful. We've viewership all over the world, and like, we've hitting 10 million views a year there. And obviously, would you believe this year we're still going to hit 10 million views, because thanks to Joe McGonigal. I mean, Joe probably won't want to hear it, but that's been, we had a clip of the rally where people WhatsApp in the clip, and it was 7 million views on Facebook. So, and of course, then it's grown. Facebook Live has moved on, and Ballybritish Motors, Pat and Rose Keogh there came on board with the Skoda this year. And I suppose ideally they would have got huge marketing out of it. I have a Skoda Kodiaq. It's a brilliant car, but we're hoping, there's still a bit left in the year. Hopefully Wexford, we can go at it. Hopefully Carrigan-Shore and the Clarny Historic. So the year's not completely over. And of course, I'm doing that Oma time trial as well. There's a gravel event in Oma there. So on the 15th of August. So, there's still a few to do.
Yeah, taking the plunge into the UK market was a big one as well, and you've obviously got a great guy on board with Craig Parry. But like, what sort of a market was there before you kind of delved across the pond? Because that's a big jump to take. Like,
yeah, well, to be honest, Craig, I met Craig in a desert in Dubai in 2003. We ended up crashing on the recce in a Land Cruiser. We actually rolled, and my driver was stuck in the car.
Okay, right. I don't want to be laughing at that, but it was just like, okay, I met this guy in a desert. Was a kind of a strange place to start. Yeah,
Wales. And he said, I'm Craig. He was overlooking at the time, seeing about doing a few events over there. And then I suppose I always kept in touch with him. He's a good fella, Craig, and he would have sat with Aaron and Gareth McHale as well. And, he's done stuff. He sat with Elvin Evans and, Gus Greensmith. And in 2013, then we approached the BTRGA in the UK about providing notes. And basically they said to both, we like the idea of having another supplier, but like, you two boys are too busy. Like, you're not really going to, if you're away traveling the world, how are you going to provide notes? And, in one sense, they're probably right. You can't do everything. You can't be traveling and doing notes to that volume that we're going to be doing competing-wise and out of the country. So what I did was then, I always kept in touch with Craig. I talked to him every few months or meet him away on the rallies abroad and that. And he's just, as I said, he's a very good friend of mine. Then, unfortunately, in 2018, testing in the Panzerplatter stage in Germany, he had a massive accident with Gus Greensmith. And he had life-changing injuries. From the point of view, he'll never compete again. And he was in hospital for weeks over in Germany. And, he had to be air ambulanced home. And like, he's still going through a recovery process. But like, it was a very, very difficult time. So I left it. Obviously, I didn't ring him straight away. I texted him and that, and once I heard he was home, then I rang him. I says, well, what's your plan like? And he said, well, I don't know. He said, I can't compete anymore. And I said, well, listen, why don't we go at it? Why don't we get into the UK market? Why don't we give it a go? Like, why don't we have a go at getting in? Like, because the doors were fairly closed tight on us, on the pace note. I suppose people are, afraid of the unknown or what they might have heard. But like, I was lucky here in Ireland that, because Dad was involved in organising around rallying all my life, so I nearly know so many people from every corner of Ireland. I would know them before I even started. Even though I competed a lot here, obviously I met more people. But I didn't compete hugely in the UK. I mean, I did a year with Johnny Greer in 2006 in the Fiesta ST Trophy. But I didn't know a huge amount, so people didn't know me or knew what I was about. So Craig was a great profile over there and, well got. So whenever Craig made inquiries, he contacted the Welsh Championship because obviously he's from Wales. And Dave Evison basically said, what, our championship needs a second note supplier. It's not that there's anything wrong with the one there, but let's give people the choice. Why force them to use one supplier? And that was really, that's really how it came about. And Dave, it wasn't easy. Some of the events probably were a bit nervous of us or a bit apprehensive of upsetting people, but Dave dug in his heels, fair play to him, no more than Sean Cahill in Midland. You always need someone to take a punt on you, no matter what it is in life, or stick their neck out for you. And that's why whenever the calling comes, it's important to stick your neck out for people if they need it as well. And we needed it last year, and Dave stuck in there and got us in. We got the promise of 6 events, I think, or 7 events, and we ended up with 17 or 18, and we had 29 on the cards for this year. And obviously we only got a handful of events, but or not even a couple of events. But the Malcolm Wilson stages is running. We're the official supplier of notes for that. It's over 40 entries they're having for M Sport cars, making notes for that, supplying notes for that. So it'll be great. I know Greystoke very well. That's where the stages have been ran from testing over there with the Ziz in 13-14, and even I did a test run in 2015. So I know it quite well. So it's actually nice to come back making notes on the stages, really, really well. So yeah, again, there's a few in the UK. I think Galloway Hills in Scotland are run, the Malton are run, the Wydene are planning on running. There might be another event in Sweet Lamb that are planning on running later in the year when things open up. So I'm just hoping there'll be a bit, just something to look forward to.
Yeah, and the art of the actual job itself, Killian, it's obviously something that you take quite seriously. And what's after striking me from this conversation, obviously knowing a bit about you beforehand, was you have a bit of foresight, you have a bit of ambition, because at 19 or 20, whatever it was, you were like, okay, I want to go to the Middle East or whatever and pick up a bit of experience. And with this whole thing, there's always that kind of element of you want to improve, you want to get better. So you did that, and you honed in on your craft. You won a national championship with Aaron McHale, obviously, and I'll come to that connection in a couple of moments' time. Gathered great experience, but the art of actually making the pace note then, I mean, that's something you're going to take quite seriously, number one, because you need to get this on point. Just to kind of put a bit of a comparison, when the film The Dark Knight was made, there was a lot of stories about Heath Ledger locking himself away in a room. Are you kind of like that you'll go back rigorously through the video that you've recorded from your lovely Skoda, probably, get the sponsors in again, and you'll obviously sit down and study that inside out. And I can imagine you being very fickle about this as well, that you want it on
Yeah,
point.
well, it's I suppose the time I really give it everything I have, and I mean Francis will probably vouch for that. Like I probably most people think I'm like a happy sort of go lucky person that's smiling or saying hello and that. Maybe people don't, but I think maybe I probably give that impression. But when I'm making notes, I'm like a bear, you know. And you can ask Francis; he'll tell you what I'm like to work with, because you know every corner is critical. You know, I always think I always want the guys or the people using my notes, I always want them to be quick but safe. And you know, I want them to win as well, because that gives me great pride and satisfaction from like I take it very, very seriously. But we do 3 runs on every stage. So I'll call the notes to Francis. Obviously, they developed over the years from when I started in 2010. Like you asked Francis, like we went to West Cork, I think in 2015, I had notes from 2012. I'll stop. We deleted everything off the pages. It was horrendous. I just couldn't. So the notes have came, and I've always tried to just get them better and better, and less stuff in them, but just more precise. And just you know things, just adding in words or saying, oh, you know, watching people's in-car, studying people's in-car after the event, then, and just say, well, is there anything there? How does that sound? Or tricky places. Try to keep it simple without taking away the importance of calls. So then I come home and I'll type the notes, which is a extremely slow and painful job, and then I check them again on the in-car. And lucky, sometimes you get the odd small typo that's discovered, but again, it's been nothing major, thankfully. And again, I'm lucky that like it's a lovely market to be in, because like whenever people ring you, they're going doing what they enjoy. It's recreational. Like it's not like I have like a business where I'm collecting for electricity or your refuse or something. Like everyone's happy. Everyone doesn't mind. Like everyone's happy ordering notes. Whenever they're going happy or whenever they're getting notes, they know they're going rallying. So it's whenever I meet people, it's like great. You know, on a Saturday morning, or the people that get the notes and DVDs sent out, everyone's buzzing. Everyone's happy. And the friendships I've even gained, that people I wouldn't have known, before I started making the notes and going to events, is just brilliant. Like, and like I'm very lucky, as I said, to have a great loyal customers and friends. And as I said, it's not like work. Okay, I've had a few months off now, and I'm definitely ready to go back at it. But no, it's great. I'm really enjoying it. Very, very lucky. You know, like I know it's a cliche. People said, do if you enjoy your work, you'll never work a day in your life. But I have to say, like, wrecking is not for everyone, but I enjoy it because I know in a few weeks' time later, someone's going to be going down trusting what I tell them, and it has to be right.
Yeah, and the job satisfaction, of course, on one of your side is when guys win championships. Like, and there's been multiple championships won from guys using the notes, which I'm sure brings you great satisfaction. But I want to kind of go to the whole Michael connection. So, Aaron is married to your sister, is that right?
That's right. Aaron's married to my sister Grania.
Right, very good. So that kind of was a kind of a convenient thing to have when getting the drive with Aaron, and obviously you won a championship together in 2007, part of a huge dynasty. I mean, Jesus, yeah. Austin McHale, one of our greatest of all time, and then to be in connection with the next generation and to go on and win a championship with Aaron must have been really special.
It was brilliant. I sat with Aaron in the Ulster in 2003 as well, and I think 2005 I did Ulster and Pirelli rallies with them. And just between one thing and another, I never sat with him full time before that. Like I suppose he had his co-drivers and so on, and I was actually committed to PJ McGrath then for 05, 06 and we planned a full year in 07, but unfortunately, PJ's wife, Siobhan, got killed in a road accident. One of the nicest people you would ever meet in your life. And I was out of a seat, but I hadn't any great interest or anything, to be honest with you. And I suppose I went to Killarney that year then doing just gravel notes for Aaron, because obviously, the Grania and him didn't get married till, I think, 08. And after Killarney, then he rang me on the way home on the Monday. He says, "Hey, what would you sit in with me next weekend in Carlow?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I would. Like if I would." So we went to Carlow then, and it just clicked. We put in a big effort. We tried to do as much as we could, and have a proper test before the event. Tried to keep the notes simple, and just try to do our best, like, and sleep properly, eat properly as best we could. Try to make it as without taking any enjoyment out of it, but just trying to approach it as professionally as we could. And we won in Carlow, and we won in Ravens Rock. We won Sligo, and it was brilliant. Aaron tied up the championship in Galway in 07. I tied it up in Clare in 07. And it was a brilliant journey. It was just, we often laugh about it. Like, Aaron and Gráinne, they have 3 kids now. We have 3 kids, and we spend a good bit of time together always, our families, anyway, obviously, up visiting them, or they're down with us. And we always look back at those years. It was just the epitome of the Celtic Tiger. We were like living the dream. We're heading away. All our friends were coming to the rallies, like, our friends from Claremorris, his friends, all booking into the hotels. It was just all go out for dinner together on the Saturday night. And like if you could have just boxed that part of your life, okay, things are better now, and family come and everything, but see that point of competing, like, it really didn't get any better. It was just a dream. And like the memories we have now, I suppose, when life is a bit quieter, looking back at those times, and everyone going to the prize giving, you might have 4 or 5 tables of people with you, and it was just crazy times. And if we're out then rallying, we might be out socialising somewhere here, even down in Claremorris. Our Eamon had a pub at the time, and it was just magic times. Then in Mayo in 2008, then I suppose I was delighted to win my home event, and I suppose Aaron's connection with the West, with Austin being from Lewisburg originally, and it was just Aaron's a Mayo Motor Club member as well, and it was just to win Mayo in 08 was brilliant. And then I suppose then I went abroad then in 09, and that was it. I think the last event I did with Aaron, I think we finished third, I think, in Killarney in 2009 in the 06 car. But we did Rally Ireland twice. I think we finished 11th in 2009, and great times. It was great fun. Even the crack. And Aaron is serious in the car, and sometimes mightn't be the easiest to get on with in the car. Again, he definitely gives off the impression he's always laughing and smiling, but ask anyone that's ever sat with him, he can be quite the opposite in the heat of the moment, and particularly if things aren't going his way. But I sat with Gareth as well, actually, in a small event in Enniskillen. It was the week before his last rally in the 206 Cup car, whatever year that was. I can't think. It was probably 04 or 03 or something like that. And Gareth rang me, says, "Hey, would you do a small event up in I was outside Kesh. I can't think of the name of the event, actually. It was Enniskillen, I think, Motor Club were running it. Anyway, he had the car sold, I think, at the time to I can't even remember, maybe Paul Kiley, and we had an overshoot in the first stage, and we were going pretty well then the second stage. And whatever he did in this quarry part of the stage, I can't even think of the name of the quarry, didn't he turn in too early? It was a week before the last event of his Peugeot career, we'll say, doing the 206 Cup, and the car was sold. And we were just doing this event for a bit of fun, and we rolled the 206 into a ball of absolute scrap, like the two of us. So that was the only time I ever sat with Gareth. So, but again, it was good times. I mean, and it's great. I suppose I'm lucky with the family connection. Gareth has 3 kids, and all our kids are all around the same. So, we'd still, spend a good bit of time together and that in each other's company. And, so it's great looking back at all these memories and all these fun times, and hopefully there's lots more ahead.
And high probability of continued involvement in motorsport with the next generation.
That's it. Yeah. I don't know what I suppose they're all. We're up at Garrett's house there a few weeks ago, and he's a buggy there for the boys, and they were out in the field, but they were all in it, all the grandchildren and that, and all the cousins, and definitely Sebastian there, which is Garrett's oldest. He got into it. He didn't have much interest by the start of it, but he just got in then, and I'll tell you, the buggy now didn't go as quick with anyone else, so it's just interesting to see. But I suppose they all take different paths, and you can't, it's, if they want to take the path, they'll take it. And even in our house, I suppose my little fella Ben, he's 5. I suppose he's never seen me compete as such. Lucy was over in Portugal back in 2016, but she was only small, and she'd remember that. And I suppose pictures and YouTube is great even to show them, because they probably think that I would always been at the end of stages or making pace notes, but before they came along. But Ben is, sort of my fellas, loves coming selling notes and just meeting people and that. But, I do bring him as much as I can. Obviously, doing Facebook Live is a bit small to be bringing to keep an eye on him. But Dad comes sometimes. He was in 5 Mile Town at the start of the year, he enjoys it. But he loves the football. He's going to cool camps and he enjoys the football. So, I mean, Michelle's father won an All-Ireland minor medal with Mayo. So there's big football. Like Michelle's brother-in-law was the captain of the Currafin team. Like he's after winning 3 All-Irelands in a row. So the football from Michelle's house is very, very strong. So he's probably going to stick at the football, I would say. But again, if he wants to go rallying, sure, we'll see what way it goes.
Yeah, and obviously you being from Crossmolina, I think of Kieran MacDonald. So there's obviously, I would say football is probably, I won't say a second fiddle now because that connection with the other half and stuff like that. But it's probably a strong second in your opinion, anyway. I suppose with rallying, like.
It is, and you know what? I love going to football matches as well. Like when Mayo are playing, obviously we haven't had a huge pile of success, but we've been lucky enough. We followed Currafin quite closely, so that's given us some joyous days in Croke Park, even back in January there when they won the All Ireland again. And I suppose maybe if Mayo won All Ireland, at least we've celebrated several All Irelands with Currafin, and the connection there with Giz playing.
Yeah, no, it's great. Listen, just before I let you go, the Graw is obviously still itching there, I'd imagine, to go back and compete. And like you're very, very close, I would say, or you were kind of flirting with a possible drive on world level on a kind of semi-permanent basis. Like, and I mean up at the higher echelons. And Aaron Johnson's another guy I should mention actually for a great run with Oliver Soderbergh back last weekend. Like, is there a kind of you're kind of in a catch-22. You're running a great business, you're doing what you love, but obviously you love competing as well. So how do you kind of balance that Graw?
I suppose there's a number of factors. I mean, the business is number one, because there's some level of security in it. The co-driving is sort of, that's why it's suited to set up the pace notes. The co-driving is sort of a tough gig. Often with most guys, you don't know what you're doing until the January, and you can't plan anything. And then like the amount of even things when you're abroad competing, like everyone sees, you're competing and with M Sport, but the level of dedication to get there, and you missed birthdays and you missed weddings and you missed everything, whereas now I'm in a more flexible thing, with the notes, now particularly with the UK has just added another dimension, the Facebook Live. Like, would I go back competing? I don't think, I'd like to go back and do an event for fun, when it suits, when maybe a quiet time of the year. I don't think, particularly when the kids are small. I mean, Michelle works there full time, and even the likes of that, me heading away for a week or 2 weeks is just, it'd be a big strain on that. And I think at this stage I've sort of achieved all I want to achieve in the sport. I think if I can pass on my knowledge, particularly in the co-drivers, in any co-driver, but the ones in the Billy Coleman group. I mean, that'll give me great satisfaction. And as I said, you never know what's around the corner. There could be one-off events there that may suit me. I'd still love to do a snow event up in Sweden. I've never actually done a snow rally or even the Arctic rally I'd like to do in January because it's a quiet time of the year. So I'm not finished. I'm definitely not finished co-driving, but again, it'd be just pure for fun. The Middle East as well. I did the Middle East Championship actually back 2 or 3 years ago with Abdulaziz's brother Nasser, and we actually, because the fuel tank in the Evo 9 wasn't homologated, we were put into a national rally, but we actually won the international rally, but they wouldn't credit us with this because the fuel tank was out of date in the Evo 9. We just did it for the crack, but we actually won the Qatar rally. But I love the desert sort of stuff. It's such a challenge. That's trying to find your markers, trying to find your way. It's a navigational challenge. The notes can change because the road changes, the lines change, the shortcuts are in there somewhat. It's a massive challenge. So, the Middle East is handy. I could fly on a Sunday and I'd be home again the following Sunday morning. So, whereas the WRC, like if you're going to Argentina or Mexico or Australia, you're gone for 10 days to 2 weeks. And not at this stage of my life, it'd be just, right now with work and everything, I just couldn't afford to be away from 2 weeks competing. And again, you don't know, there could be testing on top of that. So no, I think fun is what I'd like to do and just do maybe 2 or 3 years somewhere. And so you never know.
last but not least, because rallying is just everything to you, it's work, it's business, it's pleasure. What does Killian Duffy do outside of that? I know you said you were concentrating on getting back into shape, and that was obviously a thing for co-driving. You mentioned earlier in the interview when you were kind of going about getting back into it. That's obviously something you were talking about, was running or something like that. I'd imagine is a bit of an outlet,
yeah,
perhaps. Is it?
I like that. Like, again,
Not that you're out of shape at the moment now. I was just making reference to the earlier part of the interview, so don't kill me. I have two black eyes.
Sitting at home for the last 4 months now, I can tell you I won't be doing it. There'll be a bit of a weight disadvantage, but no, like, to be honest with you, like, you know, family time and spending time with, you know, with the kids, with the cousins, and you know, barbecues and the simple stuff, you know, going out for dinner and you know, I suppose that's the thing about, you know, even doing Facebook Live. You're away nearly every Sunday, so all of a sudden now, like I generally, if we had Anton on Saturday, even one of the kids' birthdays, like, you know, you wouldn't be able to socialize as such at it. You know, you'd have to be drinking water for the night. So it's sort of, from that perspective, it's you know, it's now when we're off, it's grand because you can just relax because you know you've nowhere to be on the Sunday or whatever. So I enjoy going away for weekends and holidays with kids and meeting up with family and that. And that's, you know, simple stuff, to be honest with you. And even kicking ball over a footpath today and at the house, it's, you know, it's just doing that sort of stuff and day trips and stuff. Like I love Ireland. Like, I just, obviously, like everyone, I hate the weather, but like I'm so proud of where I'm from. I'm so proud. I love living in the country, and I love just going seeing things and showing the kids, you know, all the nice things there is to see. You know, we were back in Achill there 2 weeks ago, and okay, actually, which is a funny story. I live in Claremorris, and Achill is 15 minutes shorter to get to than Dublin for me. I'd be in Dublin in 15 minutes longer it takes to get to Achill. Like, it's crazy. It's such a spin out, but the scenery there is breathtaking. And you know, just simple stuff, and that's what life's about. Just enjoying the simple things.
Absolutely, you hit the nail on the head there. Well, look, great to talk to you. Fair play to Michelle as well for putting, you know, doing her tuppence work for the frontline end of things. And look, I hope the two of you remain safe. I hope you know, business goes well. We might even see below in Wexford if I can get out to it myself. Hopefully, work commitments don't get in the way of that. But overall, a really enjoyable hour. So thanks for joining us on the Irish Rally podcast this week.
Sorry it was so long now, Kevin. But again, fair play to you for setting up this great initiative. I've thoroughly enjoyed them on my drives there the last few days. You know, with Ted, with Stephen Murphy, with Mick Cody. Sure, Mick is brilliant. And keep up the great work. I'm really enjoying it. And not just because I'm on, but I hope I haven't everyone bored out of their tree after an hour there. But however, Kevin, keep it up. And thanks a million for having me on.
Yes, thanks very much to Killian for joining us here on the latest edition of the Irish Rally podcast. That's all for this week, and don't forget to subscribe on your platform of choice. And again, the 5-star ratings on Apple Podcasts, every week we said, but just a little timely reminder, it's free to do so, and your name won't appear unless you do want to write a review, and all reviews are most welcome as well. Thanks again to today's sponsors, J&J Services, main agents for Hobbyweld Welding Gas, the rent-free gas bottle, located at Tullow, County Carlow. And until next time, take care.